We're about to begin our service. I would ask if you have a cellular device to please turn it to the off position at this time. Officiating our service today will be Chazan Stephen Storr of Congregation Bet Shalom.
בידו אבקיד רוחי, בעת אישן ועירה, ועם רוחי גוויתי, אדוני לי ולא אירא, ועם רוחי גוויתי, אדוני לי ולא אירא. My soul I give to you, my spirit is in your care. Draw me near and I shall not fear, hold me in your hands. Draw me near and I shall not fear, I'll be safely in God's hands. I would like to now call upon two colleagues, Rabbi Andrea London and Rabbi Elliot Malamet, to offer two meaningful selections. Rabbi London.
These things I know, how the living go on living, and how the dead go on living with them, so that in a forest, even a dead tree casts a shadow, and the leaves fall one by one. And the branches break in the wind, and the bark peels off slowly, and the trunk cracks, and the rain seeps through the cracks, and the trunk falls to the ground, and the moss covers it. And in the spring the rabbits find it, and build their nest inside the dead tree, so that nothing is wasted in nature or in love.
From the book of Ecclesiastes, Lakol zman ve'et lechol chefetz tachat hashamayim. There's a time for everything under heaven. Et laledet ve'et lamut, a time for birthing and a time for dying. Et lata'at ve'et lakor natua, a time for planting and a time for reaping, a time for keeping and a time for discarding, a time for loving and a time for hating, a time for embracing and a time for refraining, a time for slaying and a time for healing, a time for laughing and a time for weeping, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, et milchama ve'et shalom, a time of war and a time of peace, a time of seeking and a time of losing.
Hanistarot ladonai. The mysteries of life and death are in the hands of God. We don't know when life begins or shall end, but we do know how precious it is. We know that each of us will find our mortal end someday, but our faith professes that our souls will ascend back into the heavens and dwell once again in a realm of peace. There's only God that has the intel of what and why things happen here on earth. The second being likely to discover those esoteric answers could have been Brenda, the truth seeker of all things hidden. Her children called her a sleuth, always curious and investigating the details of life and your lives as well. It was her only hobby, you agreed. Sadly, we joined this family all too soon to honor the life of another beloved member of their mishpacha. When Brenda's dear Byron passed at the end of 2022, the first night of Hanukkah, the firm of B&B closed their doors after 63 plus years of marriage, some of them actually good. They had traveled to exotic places around the globe, and now they travel the spheres of the heavens together, not one of the places I believe they had on their bucket list. I'm not sure this destination has many places to shop, which they so enjoyed, but just trusting that they are back together, I hope is comforting to the family. I was fortunate to visit Brenda 2 times in April. One was a delightful 90-minute chat, and the second, more so, a one-way monologue as I sang to her and offered her blessings on her behalf, along with her deeply devoted children, Jay, Michael, Andrew, and Hillary. When she and I had our dialogue, it wasn't just chit-chat, but rather a spiritual exchange. I eventually queried about her thoughts regarding the existence of an afterlife. She responded as if she knew the question was coming. Nothing. Nothing. And then she diverted, saying, I feel as if I'm experiencing my own Shiva, with all of the kind words and calls and visits from so many people. Brenda spoke extensively about the love that she had for those people and the pride she had for the generations of her family. Jay and Ava, Michael and Lisa, Andrew and Amy, Hillary and Charles, grandchildren Richard, Robert and Bonnie, Robin and Donovan, Randy, Grant, Eli, Natalie, Jenna, Ari, Elliot, and Shai, and of course, great-grandparent to Perry and Alfred. I was also surprised when she revealed to me who her favorite was, but she swore me to never disclose that. She did say that she loved you all, but she liked the well-behaved ones better. For example, if a brother would tease his younger sister that she was adopted. I mean, who would do something like that? You, her grandchildren, should know that your grandmother was contemplating what items she might want to bequeath to you to make you happy. She was talking about trinkets and jewelry and who do I give, what do I give? I don't know what there might be sometime from now that you might acquire something of hers, but truly it is not the things that she passes on to you, but the values and the lessons that she has passed on to you. I'd like to invite one of those grandchildren, Eli, who has chosen to offer some words for us at this time.
Okay, hopefully there we go. People are dying today who have never died before. This was one of Grammy's favorite lines about death. While I recognize this is not a typical opening to a eulogy, Grammy was not a typical person. This quote is very her, a little quirky, slightly humorous, and very direct. She repeated this quote so often, including last week, as she anticipated her own funeral, that it was clear that I should start the eulogy this way. Now, I should probably introduce myself. I'm Eli Kustin, one of Brenda's grandchildren and her 24/7, 365 technology concierge. Beyond being her technology concierge, I was fortunate to spend a lot of time with her over the past 17 years. From the time I was born until the pandemic, Grammy and Papa would come over every Tuesday for dinner. Once I got older, we would have sleepovers in the red room of their Winnetka apartment, and I started to grow into my role as her technology consultant. After my grandfather's death 2.5 years ago, I tried to call and visit Grammy more frequently. Since then, we talked almost every day and grew much closer. Current events were a frequent topic of discussion, but we also talked about school, food, and whatever else was going on in our lives, and of course, tech support. Grammy was always there when I wanted to talk, be it when I was on a run, alone and using my earbuds, procrastinating, doing my homework, or during one of our frozen custard expeditions at Culver's. To capture how we, as grandchildren and great-grandchildren, thought of Grammy, I asked some of my cousins and my brother to tell me some words that come to mind when they think of Grammy. I think what we came up with really captures who she was. Quirky. Unique does not even begin to describe Grammy's personality. Except for very special occasions, she subsisted on one meal a day, along with Coca-Cola, of course, and cookies. She also loved her chocolates, ice cream, custard, and most importantly, her salt. Her gifts were also very quirky. For example, the mini Turkish rug she bought me when I think I was 4. And there was the cereal bowl she brought back from Italy last year. And don't let me forget all of her stuffed animals. Let's see if I can remember this. So the first one is something my dad brought back from Africa. Then, I can't see them from here. I was not planning on this. I think the elephant is Byron. Then there's the tomato, which is Brenda 2. Then there's the alligator, which is Dave, the big one. The small one is Rocco the Croco. And then there's Bree. And did I get everything? I think Pina Colada is the pineapple. Yeah, so... And then shiitake, shiitake, of course, which she lovingly called shitty. Anyway, curious. Just behind her family, friends, Coke, and stuffed animals, Grammy loved to learn about the world. Last March, Grammy and I watched some of the Oscar-nominated shorts, our second year watching that film. She was always reading something interesting, though she tended to select books that included genocide or political scandals of some sort. Strong-willed. Grammy was very certain in her beliefs. She managed to have opinions about anything and everything and made sure they were heard. Yet, even when she disagreed with me, she made sure to hear what I had to say. We had our fair share of arguments and disagreements, which increased as election season approached, but we never let those affect our love for each other. Last, and certainly not least, Grammy was caring. She wanted to see us as grandchildren and great-grandchildren succeed, hear what we were doing, and do whatever she could to support our ambitions. Just a week ago, Grammy asked me if I'd called my high school to arrange for her to attend my graduation. I hesitated because it was clear that this was near the end and that she wouldn't be able to physically be there. But, as I always did, I told her the truth, that I was sure she'd be there in some form. Grammy, while you may not physically be at my graduation from ETHS in 2 weeks, or my college graduation in 4 years, I know you will be there in spirit because you live on through all of us. I will miss our Culver's trips, movie excursions, dinners, and most of all, our conversations, but I'm grateful for the time we had together. I'm grateful for your advice, your humor, and most of all, your love and support. Finally, I'm grateful that you are no longer in pain and that you could die how you lived, on your own terms. We love you, Grammy. Thanks for everything. The cookies, custard, laughs, advice, stories, support, and love. I will cherish our time together forever.
Eli, your grandmother actually told me some of these stories, and she said that she called you one day saying, "Eli, I'm moving." And you said, "To where, Grandma?" She said, "I'm coming to college with you." When Byron passed, I had a word or two to say about alligators. Brenda had expressed her appreciation to me for taking on such an approach at a sad tribute such as that. In our dialogue about Brenda's many native art pieces in her home, I inquired about her favorite animal. I guessed wrong when I said giraffe, having seen a giraffe right next to her chair, but she unveiled that it was, for her, the elephant. So this time, here we go. Elephants are found in different habitats, as could Brenda, as she and Byron traveled to and fro places such as India, China, Hong Kong, Australia, and all through Europe. Elephants can eat 660 pounds of food daily. Brenda told me that she was such a poor eater that her father used to pay her 25 cents if she finished her food on her plate, and even bribed her for $1 to eat an ice cream cone, which parenthetically she did grow to love, especially with Cool Whip topping on top. Elephants drink 11 gallons of water a day. Well, in this regard, the comparison conflicts. Brenda was the Coca-Cola woman that you heard about. She explained to me that her father had a stash of Coca-Cola in his office, and she was just at age 5, would be treated to a bottle when she would come and visit him there. She exposed to me that her mother also had a sweet tooth for Coke and other snacky things. Elephants have a fission and a fusion society in which multiple family groups come together to socialize. Well, Brenda adored being with family at any opportunity, and the more, the merrier. The leader of the female group is known as the matriarch, and for your generations, she was just that. Elephants can live up to 70 years in the wild, and Brenda did live 70 and 16 more. During those first 70 years, she was exploring the world, and the last 16 years, she just spent worrying about all of her children and grandchildren. Oh, how Brenda took upon herself the role of shomeret, guardian over the family. She shared with me that she had hoped to live forever so that she could watch over the family. Her purpose was to be here and, in her words, save you from any peril or pain, as she would never trust anyone else, even the doctors, to be their guides. Elephants are generally gregarious animals, and so was Brenda. She possessed a great sense, a whimsical humor, you said, even when she became the butt of the jokes that her children would flung at her, or flung, throw at her. Brenda could often find humor in moments that others could not. Even with her abundant collection of masks, stuffed animals, and trinkets in her house, you said there were many oddities, and many of them had funny faces on them. Even the vases had faces. Elephants' mating behavior, I'll just skip over that one. Byron and Brenda did love one another, a bushel and a peck. She never totally resolved her feelings of Byron, unwillingly, of course, deserting her after he passed away, going so far as to never sleeping in that same bedroom. Even so, she confessed that she was glad Byron was not around to see her in her present condition. Elephants are among the most intelligent animals. They exhibit an indication of great self-awareness. I think that describes Brenda well. 2 years ago, I noted that she had showed great awareness of herself and her life in general when we were speaking to one another. And that thought of being self-aware and passing on that trait to her children and the generations led me to choose a wonderful reading by Rabbi Karen Kedar, after which we will hear from her children. It's called From a Mother to Her Girls, but I think it's relatable for any of you that she loved. The morning you wake to bury me, you'll wonder what to wear. The sun may be shining, or maybe it will rain. It might be during winter, or not. You'll say to yourself, black, black, you're supposed to wear black. And then you will remember all of the times we went together to buy clothes. The prom, or homecoming, just another pair of jeans, another sweater, another pair of shoes. You will remember how I loved to dress you and how beautiful you were in my eyes. The morning you wake to bury me, you will look in the mirror in disbelief. You'll reach for some makeup, or not, and you won't believe that this is the morning you will have to bury your mother. But it is. And as you gaze into that mirror, you will shed a tear, or not, but look very carefully. For hiding in your expression, you will find mine. You will see me in your eyes. You will see me in the way that you laugh. You will feel me when you think of God and of love and of struggle. Look into the mirror and you will see me in a look, or the way you hold your mouth, or the way you stand, maybe a little bent, maybe straight, but you will see me. So to tell you one last time before you dress what to wear, put on any old thing, black, red, skirt, pants, because despite what I told you all these years, it really doesn't matter. Because I told you all these years that you're beautiful just the way you are. Dress yourself in honor and in dignity. Dress yourself in confidence and in self-love. Wear a sense of obligation to do things for this world, for you are one of the lucky ones, and there is so much to do and to fix. Take care of each other. Take care of your heart, of your soul. Talk to God. Wear humility and compassion. When you wake to bury me, put on a strong sense of self and courage and understanding. Oh, and this, I'm sorry. Forgive me, for I am sorry. Stand at my grave clothed in a gown of forgiveness, dressed like an angel would be, showing me compassion and unconditional love. For at that very moment, all that is left of me to give is love. So love. I'd like to call upon Jay and Andrew to speak, and then we'll hear a special tribute from Michael and final closing words from her children with Hillary.
I'm Jay Weiss, and I'm Brenda's eldest son. She would have been very impressed by my use of the word eldest instead of oldest. Thank you for all being here and supporting us through this extremely difficult time. We're grateful that you're here. I'd like to thank my mom's caregivers, Rowena, Lynette, and Dave. Thank you for helping Mom during her last days and allowing her to maintain her dignity. And Dave, thank you for making time for our family once again. Thanks to my wife Ava for all your support through this really lousy time. And thank you to my sister Hillary. What you did for Mom was heroic. Brenda Ray Barak was born in December 1938, the daughter and eldest child of Dr. Lewis and Ruth Barak. I mention this historical information because for years, my brother, sister, and I thought her name was Brenda Lee, as our grandfather would always call for her as Brenda Lee in our presence. It was only by a chance conversation with her that I found out her actual name. My siblings and I called her Mom, unless I wanted to get under her skin, in which case I called her Ma, at which time she would answer, "I am not Ma." Her grandkids called her a combination of Grandma and Grammy. One of her great-grandchildren called her Abuela Amoeba. A few years ago, my daughter Robin, Mom, and I were discussing what Mom's first great-grandchild would call her. After she vetoed many suggestions, including Abuela, I added Amoeba to the discussion, just to get a reaction. After much laughter, Abuela Amoeba it was, a name she ultimately embraced. A one-celled tribute to the biology major from the University of Michigan. Upon moving to Chicago after marrying our dad, she worked for a short time as a substitute biology teacher for Chicago Public Schools. Education was very important to her. After moving to suburban Lincolnshire, she became involved with the school districts. First, the elementary school district to address potential health concerns related to the construction plans of the new junior high school. Then the high school to address concerns related to the curriculum and educational offerings. And while she felt very strongly regarding the issues she was asking the board to address, her push for these improvements sometimes caused a bit of grief for me as my fellow students parroted some of their parents' opinions about Mom and her allies. A few times after these incidents, I spoke to Mom about them, and she said, and I'm paraphrasing, "I'm not nasty. I'm as sweet as a pussycat in public. I go after them in private." Ultimately, she felt our local schools did not push students to strive for excellence, but merely mediocrity. This was simply not acceptable for her children nor the community at large, and she worked for years to make our schools better. The high school I'm referring to is Stevenson High School in Lincolnshire. By a variety of measures, it is considered one of the best high schools in both Illinois and the United States, something it was not when Mom started battling. Education was also personally important to Mom. She was a voracious reader, and I think was a bit disappointed that I am not, who was always on a quest to learn and used books as her primary vehicle to enhance her knowledge. She also took lifelong learning classes at Northwestern University for years, only stopping within the past 6 months when her health no longer made it possible to participate. Life around the house was interesting with Mom. I don't remember how her cooking was when I was a small child, but I do remember that she took numerous cooking lessons, mostly French cooking, maybe all French cooking. And regardless of her cooking before the lessons, I can tell you that after the lessons, her cooking was tremendous. And for me, a super picky eater as a kid, that was usually without all of her fancy sauces. Mom also kept a clean house. Some might say obsessively so. She was a Windex marksman from inside 12 feet. When I got old enough to do my own laundry, most of the time I was not allowed to, as I might put fingerprints on the washer and dryer. To this day, I still have to fight the muscle memory of using my knuckles to push the buttons on the microwave. And we dared not use the sink after Mom had finished cleaning the kitchen at night. And somehow, when we got older, she found time to start and run a business. Somehow she managed to get a little of Dad's entrepreneurial spirit. She was the president of Fantasy Marketing. Without a business background, she acquired licenses from many major universities, the NFL, and Major League Baseball, and sold sunglasses with logos of those teams, and got approved as a Walmart vendor, and managed her Trans-Pacific supply chain before we even called it that. Away from work and saving the world, Mom loved to travel. A few years ago, as her mobility was starting to become an issue, she informed us that she would be taking a trip to Papua New Guinea, where her father had served in the Army during World War II. We were able to convince her that she was not up to the physical rigors the trip required. But only 9 months ago, she accompanied her nephews, Ava and me, on a week-and-a-half trip to Positano in Rome, Italy. Mom loved the theater. She and Dad had subscriptions in Chicago for years. And no trip to New York to visit Mike and Lisa and the kids was complete without at least one Broadway show. Mom loved fashion. In some ways, her motto was like my dad's, the louder the better. But Dad's was mostly loud colors. Mom's fashion sense was, well, indescribable. And sometimes Mom's sense of humor, just like her fashion sense, was also a little out there. Mom was most definitely a smart aleck. I'm not sure if that's a nature or nurture characteristic, but it somehow passed to me as well. And for those of you who have ever played the pedestrian points game while driving, Mom informed me a few weeks ago when I drove her to one of her appointments that anyone in a lab coat in a crosswalk was worth bonus points. I didn't know she knew that game. I really didn't. She loved her children. She adored her great-grandchildren and her grandchildren. She was so proud of all of you and loved you so much. I don't know how to verbalize how much joy you all brought her. If any of us had a problem, Mom had a problem. She did anything and everything she could to help. She would leave no stone unturned in her efforts to find a solution, cure, or information. Mom also loved babies. Anybody's baby. Her voice would go 8 octaves higher with a baby in her sights. Mom taught me honesty and integrity. Between both Mom and Dad, that was non-negotiable. As a small child, I took something from a store. When Mom realized what I had done, she marched me back to the store to return the item and apologize to the manager. Apparently, this same scenario played out for my brothers as well. Mom taught me vocabulary, and not the kind in the Merriam-Webster dictionary. I've since expanded on that foundation, but I'm grateful for the seeds Mom planted and can report that these skills have passed on to yet 2 more generations. Mom was always there for me, and I always knew she loved me. Once I left home, she called me every year on my birthday, and whether I picked up the phone or the call went to voicemail, She sang happy birthday to me in a high-pitched baby talk voice, similar to what you've already heard. I'm going to miss that going forward. Mama, I'm going to miss you. Mama was another name for Brenda, albeit one used when we were babies learning to talk. The story has it that when I was learning to talk, I used to say she to mama, she to mama. It took the adults in the room a little while to figure out what I was trying to say, but ultimately they determined I was saying, Mama is sleeping. Rest well, Mom. I love you.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm Andy, the youngest boy. As a child, it is impossible to imagine that your parents will not always be there. But now in a span of roughly 2.5 years, my brothers, sister, and I have lost both of our parents. Honestly, it will take a long time for me to become accustomed to not seeing or speaking with either of them. I felt close to them both in different ways. Even now, after so much time, I need to stifle the urge to call my dad's cell phone to share the latest developments with my new company. As a serial entrepreneur, Dad would undoubtedly understand my challenges and celebrate my successes. With Mom's passing, I will now need to learn to stifle the urge to call her too. And that will be especially challenging for me because we spoke so often. Mom was my confidant. From an early age, she chauffeured me around suburban Chicago to attend vision therapy, speech therapy, tutoring, and even biofeedback. During those car rides, Mom and I developed a close relationship. She listened to my frustrations and offered encouragement, which was, at the time, badly needed. I often felt like I was in the shadows of my very accomplished older brothers and my very smart and talented younger sister. Although I look back fondly on my childhood, it was quite hard for me to be the Weiss sibling who could not sit still, who struggled with reading and spelling, and who spoke with a pronounced lisp. Thanks, Aunt Lori. Mom intuitively understood how I felt. She was a champion of those in need. Additionally, despite the fact that she was incredibly accomplished, she struggled for most of her life with feelings of insecurity. She confessed to me while in her 70s that she never thought of herself as smart until much later in life. That was, of course, patently absurd. She graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in biology. She was incredibly well-read, and she loved her Osher Lifelong Learning Institute classes. But I understood how she felt, and she knew it. Perhaps that is why we were so close. I reminded her of herself. In examining our relationship in the process of writing her eulogy, it became apparent how many important life lessons I learned from her and how deeply she influenced my life. I learned kindness from her. Mom was the patron saint of underdogs. Throughout my childhood, she repeatedly implored me to be a mensch. Mom was very involved in the school community. She organized the fun fair at Sprague School. She was the picture lady in 2nd grade, so she knew most of the families in the school district. If one of my classmates was having a difficult time socially, Mom, without fail, would urge me to be their friend. I can even hear her now, Andy, be a mensch, go play with them, how would you feel? So I listened, and you know what? I made some great friends that way. It is this lesson of compassion that I've tried to pass along to my 3 children as well. My love and disdain of politics is also attributable to Mom. She was incredibly active in local politics. She ran for the school board. She ran for town council. She sponsored referenda. She successfully campaigned against developers who wanted to build a heavy industrial park near Stevenson High School. My brothers and I were her shoe leather. Personally, I spent days on end walking in the mean streets of Lincolnshire, stuffing campaign flyers in mailboxes. Mom had the courage of her convictions, Many of her policy positions were unpopular, as Jay noted, but she remained undeterred. She did what she thought was right, regardless of what others thought. As someone who has spent most of my professional career working in or on behalf of government, Mom was an important role model for me. Integrity was important to both of my parents. It was wholly impossible for me not to do the right thing with Brenda and Byron as my parents. They both stressed the importance of doing the right thing, even when it was difficult to do so. Like Jay, I also stole. And when I stole a package of gum from Sunset Foods as a 5-year-old, she immediately drove me to the store to confess and apologize to the store manager. When I lied about the cast party for Anything Goes during my junior year of high school, the details are unimportant, she did not punish me. She merely told me that she was disappointed in my behavior and that I would need to earn back her trust. Her disappointment was literally the worst punishment that she could inflict. And when I took a leave of absence from my job as a legislative assistant for a member of the U.S. House of Representatives to work in a high-profile special election for a U.S. Senate seat, Mom was horrified that I even contemplated not honoring my commitment to return to my position in the House in lieu of accepting a Senate job with that candidate. In recounting the story 2 weeks ago to Eli, Mom talked about how she almost lost me. Interestingly, my decision 30 years ago to honor my prior commitment changed the trajectory of my professional life for the better. It is important to note, however, that there were some crucial exceptions to my mom's concept of integrity. For example, in her mind, there was nothing unethical about making guacamole for Mr. Kramer, the 11th grade English teacher, to help sweeten those college recommendation letters for Mike and me. Nor was it wrong to take the gum for herself and chew it in front of me when the Sunset Foods store manager allowed me to keep it because of my sincere apology. Seriously, how else was I to learn the lesson that crime, even if petty, did not pay? Mom also taught me many practical life lessons. For example, it is completely acceptable to eat the frosting off an entire cake, leaving the cake bare for the rest of one's family. Trash cans in bathrooms must not be used for trash. They are purely decorative. The best way to open our dad's midlife crisis car, the Corvette, was by shoving a wooden spoon into the door handle opening so as not to ruin a perfectly good manicure. A party is just not an event if there are no nuts and chocolates on the tables. It is not possible to have enough salad dressing in one's refrigerator. Jewelry is simply not large enough unless the astronauts on the International Space Station can see it. A book is not worth reading if it does not deal with genocide or war atrocities, and God forbid there ever be a happy ending. Lastly, we all learned to never, and I mean never, finish the last can of Coke unless you have a death wish. Not surprisingly, in the final weeks of her life, Mom became contemplative. In our conversations, she repeatedly expressed satisfaction with her life. She grew up in a kind and loving home. She was a daddy's girl and was always so proud to be the daughter of a doctor. She had a close relationship with her brother. She knew how fortunate she was. She had love, friendship, family, and material comfort. She loved our dad. They were married for 64 years, together for 66. She was glad that he did not have to witness her illness. She did not think he would have coped well. Mom was especially touched by the outpouring of love from her friends. The calls, visits, messages, flowers, and treats buoyed her spirits. She also expressed gratitude for her children, nephews and nieces, grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Ironically, for someone who firmly believed that children are better seen than heard, she had 4 of her own and was the matriarch of a large, rambunctious crew. Mom, thank you for both the major and minor life lessons. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for encouraging me. Thank you for pushing me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for being my friend. Even though I can no longer talk with you, sharing the latest triumphs and tragedies of my children, my career, or politics, I doubt that I will completely stifle the urge to call your cell phone. Whenever I need advice or courage to do what is right, I suspect that I will subconsciously reach for my phone, and then I will remember that you are unavailable, and I will have to be content with remembering the lessons you taught me. I do not know what legacy you hope to leave, but know that you made me a better person by being my mom. I will miss you and love you forever. I'm glad that you are at peace.
So both of my brothers so far talked about how my mother was a fierce champion for the people and causes that she believed in. One descriptor, however, that they left out was also #1 fan. And when I first started leading services as a cantor in Los Angeles, long before I became ordained or went to cantorial school, my mom made it her business to be at high holiday services when I led them for the first time. And she, after the first time she heard me do that, it was really not a request. It was more like a command that she wanted me to sing the Hineni prayer from the high holidays at her funeral. This was well over 25 years ago, and it came up a number of times. I had thought I'd get off without doing it, but seemed like the best way to honor her. So this is the Hineni prayer from immediately preceding the Musaf service of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where the cantor requests in all humility to be able to do it right, because it's a heavy task. הנני אני ממס נרעש ונפחד מפחד יושב תהילות ישראל באתי לעמוד ולהתחנן לפניך על עמך ישראל אשר שלחוני אף על פי שאני חדאי והגון לכך לכן אבקש ממך, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק, ואלוהי יעקב. אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, אלוהי ישראל. שדי היום ונורא היה נא מצליח דרכי אשר אנוכי הולך ועמוד לבקש רחמים עליי ויעל שולחי.
Good morning. I'm Hillary. the only girl among the 4 Weis siblings, and apparently the only one who did not dabble in shoplifting as a child. Although I'd like to think it's because I'm more virtuous, it's more likely that I was scared straight by tales of my brother's perp walks. I am also the baby of the family by 8 years. While some people like to call me an accident, I prefer to think of myself as a pleasant surprise. And I'm not just being euphemistic. In the winter of 1975, when she was 36, my mom suspected she was pregnant and went to the doctor. He told her that she was not pregnant and that her symptoms were early menopause. So she went about her business, irritated that she couldn't seem to shed the few extra pounds she'd recently gained. Then, about 5 months later, while she was eating lunch with some friends, I kicked her. Surprise! After raising 3 boys, my mom often marveled at finally having a daughter. But unlike her, I was not and am not a girly girl. So there was much strife about clothing when I was little. For her, as Jay said, the more brash the outfit, the better. I abided until late elementary school. Then, in anticipation of the high holidays, she took me to her favorite children's clothing store to buy an outfit for services. It was called Young Debs and Heirs. This place was as obnoxious as the name suggests, and I always hated going there. We went in, and she found a purple leather skirt suit that she wanted me to try on. I was like 9 years old. I refused, and a standoff ensued. Much to her dismay, that was the end of our mother-daughter shopping trips. Our differing styles persisted. I couldn't care less about what my mother deemed the look or what they were wearing. I have always preferred unremarkable outfits in muted earth tones and little to no makeup. She wore 4-inch heels and jeans embellished with rhinestones. She accessorized with chunky, heavy jewelry that often resembled animal carcasses. She always had long red nails and wore red lipstick, even when I was a toddler. And she meticulously styled her hair, including shaving off half of it when I was in middle school, much to my horror. But there were other differences too, many of which ran much deeper. She was very shy and private. I never stopped talking and am an open book. Some might even say an oversharer. She was a devoted Fox News fan and could not understand where my liberal views came from. I found her politics insufferable and her view of humanity too cynical. She liked extravagance and complained that I did not like or appreciate nice things. I thought she too often elevated appearances over substance. With these differences in mind, it's not surprising that we were not very close for much of my life. Although we spent a lot of time together, that was usually because of her proximity to my father, with whom I was very close, or because she wanted to spend time with my kids, and we were a bit of a package deal, especially when they were little. But I very rarely spent time with her alone. About 10 years ago, when my father's mobility was deteriorating, it became clear to everyone but my parents that they needed to move out of their 2-story house to a place without stairs. I first broached the topic with my dad, and he resisted. So I thought I'd try to make headway with my mom. I remember taking her to lunch at a deli to try to ply her with chopped liver and a chocolate Coke. But the first words out of her mouth when we sat down were, "What's wrong? You have never asked me to lunch before." And she was right. We did not have that type of relationship. But that all changed once her health started to fail. I spent more solo time with my mom in the past year than probably the last 30 years combined. I learned about her biggest regrets, which included all the years she lost with me and could never get back. Last spring, she broached the topic of our relationship and our lack of closeness over the years. It opened a life-changing dialogue between us that continued through her final days and created the space to discuss our differences with more grace and to acknowledge that we both did the best we could. I also learned for the first time about the things for which she was most grateful. She repeatedly expressed her gratitude to me for enabling my parents to stay in their apartment, even though it meant compromising on their privacy by accepting caregivers around the clock. My brothers and I are so grateful to those caregivers, especially Dave and Rowena, for taking such wonderful and loving care of my parents until the very end. Her husband and children, but especially her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, are at the top of her gratitude list. Over the past several months, she repeatedly described them to me as her greatest blessings, as gifts from God, and the great joys of her life. Nothing meant more to her than her relationships with each of them. They showed up for her in such profound ways during her illness, by calling her, by visiting her, and just being present for her. She said to me last Sunday that she was blown away by how much they loved her, and that it was among the most gratifying realizations of her life. She also described her final weekend as beautiful and as incredible. We watched home movies from the 1940s with her nephews, Andy and Jason, shared stories, held her hand, and showered her with love and kisses. She was not a physically demonstrative person. I mean, I never saw her hold hands with my dad. She was very private. And she remarked on Saturday how she'd never received so many kisses in her life. And it was so nice. She was able to express her love to those who were important to her and was able to pass knowing and feeling how much she was loved in return. I'll certainly miss her ridiculous jewelry, including the bird skull pendant, her highly impractical shoes, and her shirt with 3 sleeves, and teasing her about all of them. But more than anything, I'm full of gratitude for her willingness to be vulnerable and have hard conversations that enabled both of us to resolve decades of complicated feelings. It is the best gift she has ever given me, and I will be grateful to her forever for it.
With the image that you're seeing in front of you, I'll offer a thought from Brenda, which was, I always work to keep my children close to one another. She succeeded, to be sure, with the help of her storm cloud gatherer, Hillary, as she would call her. She taught you all to be good human beings. That was much more important to her than your material successes in life. I tried to pass on a thirst for knowledge to my children, she said. Then when my kids finally went off to college, I realized that they had some of me in them. I did what I came here to do. My purpose is fulfilled, she concluded. Brenda was so pleased with her life, which began when she was born to her parents, Ruth and Louis, and grew up with her brother Peter of blessed memory. With a giggle in her voice, she told me how she and Peter in the mornings would race to the bathroom, which they had to share. Should she have beaten him to the seat of honor, Peter used to go into her room, empty out all of her clothes from her dresser drawers onto the floor. Suffice it to say, she relinquished the battle after a short time. As they matured, Brenda became so proud of her brother, the dentist, and his 3 boys. Her nephew Andrew, or Andy, is going to share a few thoughts with us.
I heard a shriek, and Brenda said, "Have you seen the rat in my room?" My immediate and instinctive response was, "Where is it?" And Brenda replied, "It's me. Look at my hair. I look like a rat." Of course, she could never look like a rat. She's always beautiful. But that was Aunt Brenda, never shy about poking fun at herself with humor and grace. She explained she hadn't gotten her hair done and needed to find a salon. That was during our trip to Positano in Rome last July and August. We had an incredible time. What stood out most to me was her unwavering determination. Nothing was going to hold her back. She told me she hadn't worn tennis shoes in years. I think, Hillary, you told me she hadn't even owned a pair of tennis shoes in years. But I insisted that she get a pair and do a little conditioning before the trip. Positano is all hills, a challenge for anyone, especially at 85. But Aunt Brenda was a trooper. She walked. I think, Eli, you took her for some mile-long walks. She did stairs in her building. She prepared for the Italian holiday, and her efforts did pay off. She shopped, dined, and boated with the rest of us. That trip gave us memories forever. And I apologize, Jay, I should have let you know before you showed up on the trip or a week before that I had invited your mom along. The most important people in her life, her true legacy, were her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. She adored them. She called them the stars in her sky. She was so proud of all of you guys. And Brenda was deeply shaped by her parents. As we often do, she became a version of them, embracing their values and carrying them forward. Her mother, Ruth, was a remarkable woman who taught her to be strong, outspoken, and live with a purpose. She taught Aunt Brenda to never be stifled, to be true to herself, and to do today what could be put off to tomorrow. To be grateful and eager, not cynical, and always pay a debt and never ever steal. Her father, Louis, inspired deep admiration. She and my father, Peter, loved to be around him. Grandpa Lewis's dedication as a World War II veteran and successful physician left a lasting mark on their lives. His work ethic, sense of duty, and moral compass deeply influenced who Aunt Brenda and my father became. While attending college, Aunt Brenda refused to be influenced into drinking. She watched her girlfriends repeatedly get sick from drinking at weekly parties. She said, "Why would I do that to myself?" In recent conversations, I realized how many quirky food habits we shared. Neither of us liked coffee, cream cheese, sour cream, or cottage cheese. Her father refused to eat butter, so naturally, she and my dad didn't eat butter. She said, "We did what my father did." In Italy, we did enjoy something called squid ink bread. Jay, remember? It was this black bread in Italy, and she loved it so much that when she got back to the US, she tried to find a purveyor that sold squid ink so she could duplicate that bread. When it came to drinks, Coca-Cola, definitely not water. Exercise wasn't a favorite either, but somehow both my aunt and my father lived long, full lives to their 86 and 78 respectively. I loved Aunt Brenda. By blood, she's my aunt. I've always loved her. But beyond that, we developed a deep bond that I'm grateful for. After my mother passed 30 years ago, Aunt Brenda lovingly stepped into my life in a new way, often referring to me as her fifth child. She never tried to replace my mother, and for that I'm grateful, but she showed up for me in every way that mattered. She was there for my dental school graduation, my specialty residency, and many other milestones. Thank you, Aunt Brenda, for always being there. We also shared a love for travel. I'm a bit of a miles junkie, and sometimes I needed to take extra trips to keep my status. That shared travel interest led Aunt Brenda and I on several adventures. One was a trip to Hong Kong. Just about 5 years ago, Uncle Byron couldn't travel, and Aunt Brenda was really itching to, She was really itching to go on a trip. She hadn't gone in several years. I have to move my spot. I upgraded us on the way there, but booked economy on the way back. When she saw the return itinerary, she said, "This isn't going to work." Let's just say one of us flew back in economy. Wasn't me. I mean, it was me, sorry. We had a blast. It was me. I dragged her all over Hong Kong's subway system. Something Hillary said, "My mom took the subway?" At 80, you took my mom on the subway? Yeah, she was a trooper. She went all over Hong Kong on the subway system. As repayment, she dragged me to all her favorite designer shops to buy jeans she'd been eyeing. Together, we filled our bags with treasures from the markets, things we didn't know we needed. And Brenda and Uncle Byron often came out to visit Los Angeles. That's where I live. They often came out to visit several times a year. I always looked forward to our dinners. They'd come by the house, play with the dogs, and then we'd head out to whatever new hot restaurant Aunt Brenda had researched. Uncle Byron and I would go down to the cellar, pick out a bottle of wine, and start enjoying the evening. In recent years, we made sure Aunt Brenda always had easy access to her favorite bookshops, documentaries, friends, and of course, restaurants nearby. She always knew the best chefs in town. My visits to meet her in Newport were equally enjoyable. We especially looked forward to stopping at Uncle Byron's favorite milkshake shop on the side of the freeway there. And Brenda's drive to learn extended far beyond food and travel. And Brenda made it her mission to help, especially when it came to her children and grandchildren. If someone had a problem, she would research it, read everything she could, and try to help. Most recently, she found a lot of joy in her continuing college education courses. She loved learning. The current topics gave her a sense of relevance and engagement that she cherished. And Brenda was elegant, smart, funny, and fiercely loyal. Her presence in our lives was a gift. I will miss her terribly, but I will always have her spirit with me.
You can go sit in economy now. I said you can go sit in economy now. Brenda recalls her mother as being unique, a fashionista, always donning her red nail polish, which of course Brenda adopted. She bragged about her mother's intelligence and how she majored in French during college, managing even during the time of the Depression. And while Brenda claims that her mother did not reach her fullest potential, she felt during this era in which she was living, she did improve the life of those around her. She said she would translate books for the blind into Braille. I always called her my beloved mother, she said. I'm not sure why I was taught to do that, but I always did. My beloved mother. I guess I'll have to ask her when I see her, she implied. Her father, Louis, had come over from Russia in the arms of his mother. He would mature and decide to go into the field of medicine. As you heard, coming from a most modest background, he needed a scholarship to help him, and blessed he was to receive one. Later in life, he would endow a scholarship in his alma mater, Wayne State, into the medical school. She mentioned a few times that she was always infatuated with her father's captivating smile, and would always try to emulate it. Brenda told me tales of her grandparents and her parents, the large family of cousins that there were who all blended together so beautifully. She relished that large Jewish family from which she came, a fact which was very defining to her identity and her traditional Jewish upbringing. The families on Shabbat would sometimes meet, eat, play cards, and kibitz away the hours. I heard regarding the impressive count of cousins a brief anecdote. One time when she returned to her high school for her 50th anniversary reunion at Mumford, someone approached her by name. Brenda was slightly embarrassed and asked to see their name tag. She then realized that it was one of her own cousins. The family was so large that she would forget every now and again, but it was never large enough because her heart always had room for more and more people. She was also blessed to have dear friends who have been in touch with her, such as her friend Pat, who was very loyal to her, and another lifelong friend, Lori Weiss, who's here today to share a few memories with us.
Whoa, this is a hard group to follow. I think it will be interesting because I use so many of the same words that you use to describe Brenda. I'm going to share some Brenda stories from my perspective with you. I've always felt that the most memorable people were those about who I could tell the most stories, and thereby relive crazy, exciting, and even sad moments in our relationship. My old and loving friend Brenda fits this description to a T. She was unique in so many ways. There was no one quite like her. The stories could fill volumes. Our friendship began 56 years ago when I met Michael's college buddy, Byron Weiss, and his wife, Brenda. Through the years, a bunch of these friends stuck together no matter where they lived, through thick and thin, from their 20s into their 90s. As I bring forth memories of Brenda, I can visualize a stunning woman, usually dressed in black and white, and sometimes animal prints, who appeared as a true, here we go, fashionista, bedecked in large silver bracelets, rings resembling brass knuckles, and earrings which hurt because she did not give in to ear piercing. She loved headscarves if her hair needed doing. And she wore those scarves with great style, always in full makeup with bright red lipstick and polish, perfect eyebrows, short blonde hair, and light complexion. Looking put together was very important to her. Her designer clothes and bags were a statement, which drew compliments and sometimes giggles. Attractive Brenda loved blouses, which were conversation pieces. We named one of her shirts her amputee shirt, as it had 3 sleeves. Another had what she thought was a French applique, which read PFUQUE, which she pronounced as she thought it was pronounced, and she said, "Phew, Q." When we pointed out her error, she was mortified. In those days, she was really very prim and proper. Yet a third blouse from the front looked like she was walking backwards, and from the back, like she was moving forward. Very clever. She got that one. What I didn't get was where she got those clothes. On to shoes. Brenda thought toes were ugly. Were so ugly that she never wore a pair of sandals. To her, gym shoes were not attractive, but she did wear them when she was younger and playing tennis. She was a pretty good tennis player. Heels were uncomfortable, only for dressy occasions. Her favorite footwear were flats with bows or buckles on the toes, but never any socks, even in winter. In Thailand, bows were what she chose when riding an elephant through a river with Michael. The elephant boy had an extremely peculiar look on his face when he looked over at Byron and I by the water's edge. Brenda adored fashion magazines, architectural magazines, shopping in haute couture stores, attending shows on Broadway, and going to Ravinia for concerts with us every summer. Always ready to plan a trip to the most exotic place she could find on earth. We ended up with a group of about 5 couples who journeyed the world together. I can envision Brenda with bags and bags of junk candy when boarding a plane. She was ready for adventure. In Vietnam, Byron decided not to go because of business conflicts. No problem for Brenda, as she was an independent soul, happy to go as a single despite her hurting back. Michael, my husband, was her self-appointed caretaker, always late for the tour bus. The group, guide, and driver would burst into song when she was nowhere to be found, singing. And picture this, the whole bus singing, Oh, where is Brenda? Brenda, where can she be? Every time we went out. And then applause followed as she emerged from the hotel with her rubber donut back support, which Michael had fastened to her waist because it got left in so many places. Each time we left for a plane, he would head to her room, search for left-behind items, like, true, her passport, her underwear in a drawer. And he announced more than once that he was going to murder Byron for not coming on this trip. Things were never quiet on our trips. In India, on the way to the Taj Mahal, a lower caste blocked the tourist buses and the trains to protest the government. So our tour company scrambled for 15 minutes and remarkably produced 10 white shiny Volvos to retrieve us and our bags back on the road to Cheers. But in a short time, a car carrying Michael and I and Byron and Brenda was hit by a truck because in India, no one pays attention to traffic rules, even though there are some. Always lots of honking going on, or perhaps our driver fell asleep. The truck driver, and this is true, the truck driver and their helpers jumped down, incensed, schlepped our driver out of our car, and began to beat him up. It was like being in a scary movie. Our lady tour guide immediately ran to our car to be sure we were okay, pulled those guys off our driver, and waved a wad of bills at them. And that conflict was resolved very quickly. Our driver sped off in the wrong direction, unaware that he was on an adjoining road that went nowhere. Our screaming resulted in a fast stop just short of a cliff. Next trip, I wanted to see normal Japan, but Brenda talked me into Myanmar and Laos. I didn't even know where they were. I didn't know there were that many monks, stairs, or fields of old statuaries anywhere else in the world. At one stop, we got into a shaky rowboat, which headed for caves cut into a mountain. Steep, flights of stairs with no railings to the top, just brick walls on the side to steady us. Each crevice at the end of each flight contained centuries of more statuary. Byron again sat down at the water's edge. I climbed 2 flights, Brenda the same, and ultra-fit Michael made it the farthest. No one ever reached the top. Getting back in the boat, I heard something drop. Hand down, finding something weird at the bottom of this wet boat, I lifted one of Brenda's bright red fingernails. I handed it quietly back to her with a straight face, hoping she had forgotten that once she had told me that her perfect, long nails, without ever having a chip, were her own. Leaving Laos to return to Myanmar, a 2-hour van ride to the teeny airport, I asked the guide if it wasn't too foggy to fly. You could really see nothing out of the windows. Nah, these pilots are pros and do this early every morning. Skeptical, we waited in the teeny terminal for our plane to arrive, and suddenly people were out of their seats, running to the windows overlooking the runway that this pro pilot had barely missed as he crashed our plane in front of us. Very exciting trips. He rolled past the runway and hit a bicycle rider. As I figured 2 planes wouldn't crash in one day, we waited 2 hours for the cleanup and a new plane. rejecting the most considerate offer to go back to the hotel and try again the next morning. All I wanted to do was get out of there. In these countries, somehow, something insane, unpredictable, or terrifying would always seem to happen. No one would blink an eye except us. Mules biting each other on the way up to Santorini. Food which looked like translucent noodles turned out to be jellyfish. Bottles of wine had snakes in them. Speaking of food, the Weises were always together in one venue or another for eating. Brenda loved fine dining, and she also loved joints. What she didn't like were places filled with geriatric people. Geriatric had become her favorite word. If a noise in a restaurant was deafening, but the place was filled with young people, she was ready to eat. Conversation didn't count. It was just that the place was filled without old geezers. Brenda was a one-meal-a-day gal, but I just know there were snacks along the way to dinner. I can name her 12 favorite foods. The list contains lots of salt, Coke, and nothing green, except a lettuce leaf, perhaps. Byron followed her lead, except on our trips when he was the first to show up for breakfast and lunch while Brenda was sleeping, dressing, and looking for all her stuff. Brenda was an extraordinary cook who took lessons from some famous Asian chefs. Every few years, we gave a party for about 40 of our mixed friends. Weiss and Weiss Productions, we called them. She did the cooking and flower arranging, sculpted breads and fruits, and I did all the grunt work: shopping, rentals, cleaning food, clearing, and tasting, because she hated butter, and now I know why, from another speech. Once she made a gorgeous sculpted pineapple bird as a centerpiece. I noticed that the head had been lopped off. We each blamed the other's friends. I'm happy to report that the culprit was one of her ill-mannered cousins. Brenda had many interests and talents. She was a researcher and protester, as was I. We advised each other on tactics to solve school and community problems. Once she disrupted a school board meeting with a line of wheelbarrows filled with her evidence. She was also a vociferous reader and took lit classes at Northwestern, sending Michael a book she promised he would enjoy. Not only didn't he enjoy it, he asked her what the hell the book was about. And she very sheepishly said, "I don't really know. I didn't understand this either." Politics were omitted completely from our discussions. We both knew that never the twain shall meet. Brenda was amazing and funny in so many ways, an independent woman to the 9th degree, mother to 4 fine children who were very accomplished, an adoring grandmother of 11, and lucky her, 2 little great-grandchildren. She was a person who kept up with all her friends near and far. If you were sick, upset, or in trouble, she and Byron were always there. I am grateful to have had you in my life, my caring, lovely, somewhat kooky friend. Your absence has already left a big hole in my heart. Thank you.
We're coming to the close of our service with a couple of thoughts and a prayer. Brenda had cynicism and skepticism for conventional wisdom and politics and big pharma, but her soft spot was just as large as she spent time with organizations with regard to autism and trying to cure neurovascular diseases as she sat on committees at the Children's Memorial Hospital. Like many soap operas in her era, Brenda was a guiding light to each of you, and she loved all her children. As we have but one life to live, we must count the days of our lives and stay young and restless when it comes to being a true participant in life. Even in these solemn hours, as we feel as if we're on the edge of night amidst dark shadows, we must hold on to our faith. Our lives must go on as you search for tomorrow, but not without keeping Brenda central in your heart as you recall this bold and beautiful woman. As the world turns, each of us shall come to our own final moments. Some of us will be under the care of the doctors in a general hospital, or like Brenda, to be within one's own home. When in our final hours the secret storm approaches, may we be blessed, as was Brenda, to have found love and to have built a dynasty over which she felled every day. I asked Brenda several questions as we recognized the slow march toward the end of her days. She had battled a stroke recently, which impaired her love of reading, and then it was discovered she had confronted some lung cancer as well, and time was going much more quickly than we all hoped. One question, which should be no surprise coming from a cantor, was there a special Hebrew song or prayer you would like me to sing at your funeral? She paused. Not being a grand music lover, she thought, and she said, Hava Nagila. She told me I liked the rhythm, and we had fun whenever we sang that. Truthfully, I tried to talk her out of it. But once Brenda put her mind to something, as Michael pointed out, she wants to hear it, she's going to hear it. So here we go. A little adagio, a little slower. Hava Nagila, Hava Nagila, Hava Nagila venismecha, Hava Nagila, Hava Nagila, Hava Nagila venismecha, Hava neranena, Hava neranena, Hava neranena venismecha, Hava neranena, Hava neranena, Hava neranena venismecha. Uruachim, Uruachim belev sameach, Uruachim belev sameach, Uruachim belev sameach, Uruachim belev sameach, Uruachim, Uruachim belev sameach. To be honest, I don't think Brenda had a clue as to the translation of the words Hava Nagila, but she loved the nostalgia of it. And then I gave some thought to it. The words translate to, let us rejoice, let us be happy, and let us awake with a happy heart. Then its connection made sense to me for today, because that's all she ever wished for you, was to wake each day with a happy heart. She also had, if she had more time, she said, she would want to visit and share a message of hopefulness with others who have been riddled with a condition like hers. She would speak to them and remind them that this closure of life was only one aspect of life, and even though that the end of this seems to be gentle, I will take that. That's what Brenda said. My end seems to be gentle. And I'll take that. I may have lost the battle, but I haven't lost what's so important to me. And she wished to tell other people that they will not lose what is so special and precious to them, because whatever you've had in your life, that is forever yours. And Brenda will forever be yours as well. May her presence always be more profound in your lives than the absence you feel today. Amen. Let us stand and dance the hora. We shall offer a final prayer in solemnity and in great love and honor. מלא רחמים שוכן במרומי, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים ותורמים, כזוהר ריקים מזהירים, את נשמת בשה רבקה, בת לבר ברחל לאה, שלחה לעולמה, בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה. אנא בעל הרחמים הסתירה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרורי חיים את נשמתה, אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר Amen. Dear God, we pray today and for the time to come that you will always keep the sweet soul of Brenda Weis in your embrace. We ask that this loved individual find a perfect peace in your internal embrace and in the embrace of those who await her spirit in the heavens. May her family always embrace her in their hearts. May her soul be bound up in the bonds of life. Once again, we pray the next time you have reason to come together as a loving family, only be a sweet day in your lives. Amen.
This concludes our service here in the chapel. The interment will take place at the family plots at Memorial Park Cemetery in Skokie. Following the interment, the family will be sitting Shiva. That information is available on your folder. For those of you who are online, that information is available on our website at the Custon Residence, 2128 Pioneer Road, Evanston, 60201. That'll be today from 4 p.m. until 8 p.m. Memorial contributions may be made to the Rush University Autism Assessment, Research, Treatment, and Services Center or the Malnati Brain Tumor Institute. That information is also available on your website. For those of you who are online, the information is available online. For those of you who are going to be going in procession with the family to the cemetery, please make sure you obtain an orange funeral safety sticker. Sticker should be placed in the front passenger side of your windshield. We would also ask you to have your bright headlights and hazard lights on at all times. For an additional measure of safety, our staff will be placing magnetic flags throughout the procession. As we drive in procession today, please drive as close as safety permits to the vehicle in front of you at all times. We want to avoid any large spaces or gaps in the procession. At this time, I'm going to ask the grandchildren to please step forward and be pallbearers. I'm going to ask everyone else to please stand if you're able.